Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn how to strengthen your data security posture in the public sector. As we know, in today's digital world, trust is everything. Understanding your data security posture is more important than ever, which is why you need more than just reporting. You need a comprehensive data security platform. It no longer is enough to react. Organizations need to take a proactive approach to managing their data. Before we jump into content, I thought we'd do a quick round of introductions. My name is Heather Herenstein, and I am going to be your moderator today. I am a director here on the federal team at AvePoint, and I have almost 20 years experience supporting federal IT, including almost 8 years at Microsoft. I am joined by my colleagues, Rob and Christian. Rob, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Great to be introduced to everybody. My name is Rob Brennan. I'm the manager of solutions engineering. So at AvePoint, my role and responsibility is to provide gap analysis for customers and help come up with deployment strategies to put out new technology into environments. So I lead a team of engineers and advisors and architects. And we basically just live, eat, sleep, and breathe what we're talking about today, every single day with helping the public sector customers. So appreciate the opportunity, and thanks everybody for joining. So Christian, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. Christian Zontak here, Senior Product Analyst at AvePoint. I focus on a few of our products and our platform in general, everything kind of related to data and information security, even information lifecycle, from the day your data is made to the day it's destroyed. That's kind of where our products help you out. So happy to be here.
Great. So our goal over the next hour is to talk about the latest strategies and tools to improve your data security while maintaining the compliance framework specific to public sector organizations. We're going to help you understand some of the challenges in public sector, how to implement these effective frameworks such as NIST Cybersecurity Framework or CSF 2.0, and use advanced technology to stay ahead of the threats. This session is going to provide you with practical tips and actionable insights to help your organization protect its most valuable asset, your data. Rob and Christian are going to walk us through understanding the current public sector data security landscape, gaining insights into current threats and challenges in the public sector, and really understand that importance of having a robust data security posture. We'll walk through the NIST CSF and learn about the core functions such as identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, as well as talking through some of the benefits of adopting the framework in the public sector. Next, Christian will jump into exploring data security posture management, or DSPM, and understand what that is, why it's essential, and learning about key components such as data visibility, risk management, and compliance assurance. We'll then get a deeper dive demo into how you can implement NIST, CSF, and DSPM together, get a step-by-step implementation guide with some real-world examples, best practices, and common pitfalls to avoid. And last but not least, we will leave a little bit of time, hopefully, for some Q&A, and then we can leave you with some resources with the slides as well. So let's jump in. For those who aren't familiar with AvePoint, we have been the global leader in data security and data governance and data resiliency for over 2 decades. We have helped enable companies to collaborate with confidence, and we are supporting public sector customers across all federal cabinet level agencies and in all 50 states by helping them to take control of their security posture, proactively mitigate risk, ensure compliance, and stay resilient in today's AI world. We started with backup for on-prem, Exchange, and SharePoint, and now our FedRAMP Confidence platform has evolved to secure and manage not just data in M365, but also in other clouds like Salesforce and Google. AvePoint's Confidence platform allows you to secure, govern, and recover your most sensitive cloud data. All right, Rob, over to you. Can you walk us through what you're seeing and hearing in some of your conversations with customers these days? What are some of the current challenges agencies are facing as it relates to data security?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So, yeah, in my role, what I'm doing is I'm traveling around with Heather and other groups of key AvePoint personnel. And like I said, we're meeting with customers on site on a regular basis and kind of talking about industry trends, industry needs, their specific needs to get different items and technology deployed out into their user base. Honestly, the biggest things that are out there right now, there's a lot of happening, a lot of transition, a lot of changes that are happening out there. So, there's a lot of questions about doing less with more, instability in budgetary cycles or changes in procurement processes that people are trying to navigate. We're working through and seeing a lot of push for AI in general, but not just AI, new technology. We have compliance risks or compliance changes and risk mitigation processes that need to be done for new compliance, things like CMMC moving over in the federal contract and CUI information. Some of the other exciting and interesting challenges and trends that we're seeing out there right now are really rapid advancements in hybrid compute and SaaS cloud space. With the proliferation of AI and other technology trends that are out there, and with the modernization efforts that are happening in the government structure right now, what we're really seeing is a lot of people moving over and adopting more of the commercial off-the-shelf type of cloud services that are out there, adopting newer technology and transformation and making changes. And then I think one of the things that we're also seeing is a lot of restructuring, and it's part of that modernization effort in Enact. But with the restructuring, what I'm seeing a lot now is, centralization of tenants, trying to lower the footprint and the swath of the architecture. And the idea is to do less with more on some of these aspects, get some consolidation in, and to make some things easier to manage and really just get processed. In the end of the day, what I'm really wanting to focus on and kind of talk about today isn't really the challenges, the risks, the headwinds, and other things that we're facing out there. I really kind of want to talk about the positive trends that are happening on it and where we're going with it, what we're seeing in the industry, and what people are really trying to solve and resolve. So as we're looking about this, data management is one of the biggest things that is a pain point and an issue. And we'll see some metrics and slides for that in a few moments. But when you really break it down and take a look at it, what we're seeing is that operational efficiency improvement are the big trends that are out there. It's got our user base, our different, it's got the user base, it's got the business in general and the agencies really trying to adopt, modernize, and really take advantage of that new technology. So with AI and some of the new technology and trends that are out there, we're seeing real world business ROI now. We're finding actual use cases above what we heard in the beginning with marketing. And we're seeing that get deployed out for rapid advancement. So things like call centers, technology and routing, being able to provide advanced support, education, training, and data and information out to the fields and multiple providers. Information sharing across boundaries are all coming out more and more. And what's beautiful about it all is a lot of the things as security professionals, GRC professionals, records retention, all the people that are working in data, what we're seeing is that there's now an agency and a business interest. A lot of the funding obstacles that are out there are being opened up for us to be able to take care of things like data management, risk management, mitigation, and moderation. So I think for me, what I really like about it right now is in some aspects, times are difficult. We have a lot of challenges, but at the same time, it's really brought attention into areas of focus that we've all been talking about as security professionals for years. So this to me is really a large opportunity. When we're getting into the challenges, which is the next slide of it, when we're getting into the challenges, it's the same things that we're seeing over and over again. So, the cybersecurity landscape has just been growing. We've all been saying it for years, and it's getting to the point where we're constantly faced with cyber threats. That's basically the next, landscape of war and threat that's going on out there. So what you see in the news right now is a lot about ransomware attacks, phishing attempts. It's just a standard pervasive issue. And when you look at the metrics and the information that comes out there, every 11 seconds, one of our peers and one of our customers and companies are being hit with ransomware attacks. It's just absolutely pervasive in the industry. It's causing massive business interruptions across the board and huge amounts of loss. And these are the kind of challenges that we really need to focus on and tackle as that data landscape changes. When we start looking at some other metrics in the industries, on the next slide, what we'll see is how executives and our stakeholders and leaders are really starting to view these challenges. A lot of the metrics in these reports, you can see links. We'll share the slide decks afterwards, and you'll be able to dive down and dig into these metrics. But what really stands out to me in the data challenges right now is, the four figures that we see on the screen that I've pulled out. 89% of executives are saying that the high level of data quality is absolutely essential to my success. Everybody knows how important your data is. 75% of them don't trust what their data is. And don't trust the data at all. Now, as a security focus, to me, that sounds like a win. Zero trust. Trust but verify, the way it goes. But in this case scenario, we have to be able to trust that our security teams, our focus, our GRC teams, et cetera, have got the data in a situation where they can actually trust that they're going to get the right valuable data information. The security construct is going to be safe and secure, et cetera. The two notes on the bottom that I really highlighted that I wanted to point out are the ones that really resonate with why we're talking today and what we're working toward. 50% of the survey responses came back saying that the businesses achieved significant implementation issues related to data quality and security. And as we start really kind of diving into this and talking about it, the bigger thing is that's a huge volume. 50% of the people that got ready to go and start doing some of these deployments, some of these issues are running into delays. It's causing pain points across the board in the industry. And as a result, 2/3 of the executives and the groups that came in are rating themselves and their organization at below average in managing the life cycle of information and applying any type of governance, compliance, or other ways to protect the data. So with that said, summarizing it up with the challenges facing public sector, it really just boils down to, there's some pretty interesting times that are heading in the market right now, which typically happens when there's changes. But with the new technology and all of the challenges that the technology specific is bringing out there, what we're really being faced across the board are being able to build confidence in our data so that we can have confidence when using things like Gen AI. When we, and that's the biggest thing. 6% of the AI pilots that have actually progressed and been out there have actually made it through into production. One of the biggest things that we're seeing out there across the board, whether you're in the DoD, you're in the Defense Industrial Base, or you're a state local government, what we're seeing across the board is that internal data management, internal security boundaries, and internal risk management, insider risk management seem to be the biggest challenges that happen. We're all really good about protecting our edges, making sure that we have intrusion detection, intrusion protection from outside stuff, but it's the insider risk management that seems to be the biggest challenges that we're facing. Cost savings and efficiency comes in very much with all of the budgetary changes and cycles that we're all facing right now. Technology leaders are all under pressure to do less with more, which is a consistent and running theme for us. So what we need to do is really work on getting ourselves more efficient and implementing processes that are repeatable, automated, and orchestrated in order to make sure that we have a consistent theme across the board and that we are efficient in all of our operations as security leaders. The next changes that are happening and that we're facing again are regulatory compliance. Luckily for us, there are new regulatory compliance edicts coming out that are kind of tightening some things up. When you talk about CMMC and some of those latest edicts that are out there, they're really adjusting the compliance that is to make it easier for us, better for us, and give us more control, security, visibility, and the ability to protect that data. So the regulatory compliance changes haven't been that bad. I think there's been some challenges with interpretation and understanding, but with the latest revisions of things like CMMC, and any of the other updates out there, it's pretty straightforward. These are things that we have to tackle and get done. When you really summarize it all, what we're really trying to do, again, is manage our risk and build resilience across all of these environments in order to achieve these goals and get the end goal and the end mission accomplished, which at that point brings us into NIST and the cybersecurity framework and what its advantages are. So the standout for me on NIST is how it provides a huge consolidated taxonomy. It's a common language that I'm able to use when I'm working with my customers and when the customers are working together to convey to the business and align ourselves with the business what we're doing, get engaged with the right stakeholders, and ensure that we're really getting a holistic approach and we're handling all the foundational things that we need to accomplish in order to build off our security plans and just get everything implemented out there in the environments. So the next question that always comes up is, it sounds kind of ambiguous, just being a function. So what is it? NIST is really, NIST says it's a structured approach to managing cybersecurity risks, offering high-level outcomes that can be tailored to any organization's need. Now, I agree with that statement, but I think it really undersells the value of this framework. CSF isn't new. CFS 2.0 came out, I believe it was April last year, and got built up. It's just a build off and iteration of 1.1, making it better. But in the end, I think CSF's been around, I believe it was 2013, one way or another. I first got exposed to it in 2013 or 14 when I was working at a public utility company. And I've seen so much transformation get facilitated from following the framework. It's ridiculous. Our CISO at the utility company absolutely just became a CSF champion. It wasn't CSF at the time. It was what was it? It was critical infrastructure systems safety is what we were working on. So we were building out industrial control, or we were building out new domains for our industrial control systems to set up air gaps to ensure that we had resiliency and protection inside of our critical infrastructure. And we were able to go ahead and implement this framework to move us from a very, let's just say, risky situation to build up that SCADA Iconics and an entire ICS environment into a situation where it met security best practices. It was done efficiently, and it was done in alignment with our needs for our business continuity, our disaster recovery, and other compliance initiatives and plans. So I became a big fan of CSF back then and how we were able to get it structured out. By using that framework, we were able to do a lot of things very efficiently, succinctly, and meet those best practices. You know, we're talking about things like the industrial control systems again. We're talking about data center full plan design builds. We're talking about our first cloud adoptions. For 7-8 years, I just lived that CSF program, and it really did facilitate us getting the jobs done in the business. When I came over to AvePoint, what CSF really provides to us, especially in the 2.0 function, is a structured framework that my teams can use. Not only does AvePoint use it internally for things in our software development lifecycle, for a lot of our security policies when we're designing and building the framework, but we also use it on my team when it comes to working with customers. And the way it works for us, and we'll start to see the breakdown of the pieces and components in a moment, but we're applying the core functions, categories, principles, and key components in our gap analysis as we're working through to understand what the roadblock, obstacles, concerns, and risks are for clients and customers when they're rolling these things out. So we're really functioning, or we're really operating and making use of those three key components: the core, which has your functions, your implementation tiers, which is where we can rate our maturity model, and then finally our profiles. So on the next slide, we'll start getting into it a little bit and take a look at the components and the pieces and the building block of this system in order to accomplish our goals. The way the core is broken down, or CFS is broken down, as I said, is there's a couple of key components. You've got your core, which has your, your core is your functions. Now, functions are, on the core, we have 6 functions. And what we've got is we've got govern, we have identity, protect, detect, respond, and recover. If we're familiar with the older versions of this, there's really not much of a change there. There was 5 functions previously, but the latest thing that they've done with the NIST CSF to really expand it out is broken governance out into an all-encompassing category that's really embedded into everything that we're doing on these gap analysis, the project, and then finally finishing the framework. The reason that these adjustments and changes have been made is because what this will do is give us a better alignment with our agencies and organizations' missions. And then it really helps us to ensure that we have a wider depth of coverage across the board to ensure the security parameters are met. And then secondarily, or the final thing that it's really doing is setting it up so that we have a common framework, a common taxonomy that can be used for not only conferences and communications with leadership and our user base and peers, but also with our other vendors and third-party collaborators. When we break it down and we start looking at those core functions and we start looking at the categories that fall into them, this is where we're really able to explain the discipline of the function, the area, the avenue of aspect that we're looking at, and start getting more granular into what we're trying to achieve, what the business outcome or the response is for each of these functions. So as we're starting to dissect and analyze the business when we get into our profiles next, what we're going to be doing is taking these core ideas, these core functions, these verbs that are explaining what we're trying to do from a business initiative. We're going to break that down into these categories or these aspects of security that we want to review. And then once we start to have and analyze that framework, we move on into CSF 2.0's subcategories. Now, the next page with subcategories is where we're really going to start to take those concepts and dial them into true business actions that we're trying to achieve. So when you look at the subcategories that are on the screen right now and what we're trying to accomplish and get to, you can start to see that taxonomy, that nomenclature, that function, and that structure. The screenshot on the screen, or the screenshot that's up here right now on the slide deck, is actually showing DRPS, and then we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. What we're looking at here is based on the taxonomy and nomenclature. What I'm looking at is subcategories for the protect segment. We know that we're in the data security segment, and then we can start to see the business outcomes that we want to ensure that we're meeting as we're developing and creating our plans. So just real quick, taking a look at these, the problem I run into with these is they are ambiguous. They were designed to be that way because they're speaking to the spirit of the business outcome that we're looking to get to. When you look at these, some of them are extraordinarily self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. So as I'm evaluating this initiative that we're trying to take care of, I'm looking at data security, my segments under there, my subcategories on it. I need to ensure that my data is protected in rest, protected at transit, and protected while in use. And then I also need to make sure that I have resiliency, aka my backups are created, maintained, and treated. All of those are pretty straightforward. But as you start to look at some of these other categories that seem less straightforward and more ambiguous, you might need a little bit of assistance in dialing it. So as we start looking at the CSF 2.0 subcategory examples in the next slide, what you'll see, and there's slide decks again in the back of this presentation that will be shared with you afterwards, is NIST has given us a very large framework of support documents. There's a large community profiles that we can share, and other information that can really help us to take the foundational core concepts, categories, and map them out to business. So to really dial in what those subcategories look like from real world examples and using NIST framework, we can see that we're looking at a governance aspect of the framework. We are looking at organizational context. The subcategories may be a little ambiguous to some extent, but in the end of the day, what we can see from the examples is that we want to make sure that we are in alignment with the organizational mission, it's understood, and it informs what we need to do in cybersecurity management. The real world tangible example is actually showing some of the things that we can do. We can share organizational missions through our policy statements. We can make sure that we have the mission statements, the vision statements, and everything is there. We can embed our security into the awareness campaigns and groups, and we can ensure that we have a good understanding of what the business needs are as we're evaluating. So that's an overview of the core and the foundational components. That's great. Now that we're going to know what the business outcomes are, the next thing that they provide for us is profiles, or our profiles. Profiles are my absolute favorite segment. This is where I live, eat, sleep, and breathe. It's what I do every day, and it's been ingrained completely into my life. So a profile is a living, breathing thing. It's a living, breathing document. It's aligned with your mission. It helps us understand where we are today, what our current state is. It understands where we are from a maturity model when we use the tiers. And then it also helps us understand what our goals are. We can actually take all of that information to provide our gap analysis, create our plans, and then implement and roll with that plan. So when you look at the CSF profiles, they're actually pretty self-explanatory in this document. The idea is you're going to go in and scope the organizational profile. If we think back to the governance initiative on the last slide, what we're going to do is we're kind of bearing this down is we're going to identify what it is that we're trying to resolve, what we need to have the security policies, implementations, and places in for, what the scope of that project is, what are we doing for the business. We need to gather all of the information needed. What's our current state? What's our current aspect of how well we're doing? What's our maturity tier model? We need to create and build an organizational profile to work off, where we typically have feedback from the rest of the business, larger groups, focus groups, staff, to make sure that our governance boards and retention boards, security boards are all involved and in place when we're designing how we're going to handle our security footprint. We complete that gap analysis, identifying the differences. We update the plan, We create action plans that we can disseminate to staff, and then we repeat. We move back as we complete those steps. We update our organizational profile to ensure that the current states are where they need to be. And then periodically and over time, we lather, rinse, repeat, and do it again to ensure efficiency. The last thing that I had mentioned on these is tiers. So, a lot of people don't like the phrase maturity model anymore. But I still like to put that in there. What happens is, as you have a profile, you understand what the business is, what it needs to do. We've got that mapped over to the core foundations, the subcategories, and we have a plan and a design. What we need then is the tiers. Now, they're giving us these tiers so we can evaluate what our current state is, what our future state is, and what our final state may be, or growth state as we go. The tiers provided are very abstract. As it states here, we can actually go through and pull some appendix information out of the NIST documents and get it built out. But tiers are a critical thing. And the one main aspect on it is you got to think of tiers as benchmarking. You don't want to just say, I'm at point A, this is where I want to go, and start thinking about the art of the possible. When you're actually analyzing and working through and building with these plans, the expectation and the hope is that, we're falling under tier 1 and 2. We're going to have a partial view of the situation at hand. We're going to move into a state of like maybe a phase 1 or a tier 2 is a phase 1. We're moving into a risk informed state. We have a better landscape. That may be all we need to do at that point with something like rolling out a Gen AI. Right now, we don't know what we don't know. In order to get into a pilot phase, I may be structuring and setting it up based on my organizational profile that I'm currently in a tier 1, and I'm moving to a tier 2 where I have full analysis and a discovery scan and understanding my environment. That may be the only mission I need to get to the next phase of my deployment project or my grouping. But then I may have another sprint, another iteration, or another phase that's going to move me up in these tiers. And the objective for all of us as we go and grow is to allocate and identify the right amount of risk management to be put in place in order to effectively manage the business without becoming an impediment. Now, putting it all together, when you sit down and you leverage and utilize this framework, between all of the materials, the process, and the defined functionality that we're going to get done on it, the outcome not only gives us our action plans that we can use to improve our security posture and footprint, but what that's really doing is it's giving us all the tools with the common taxonomy, the common nomenclature, and a wide depth of a security footprint so that we can actually use that framework as the building blocks to start facilitating our compliance needs and facilitating our business needs. So the big advantage to CSF as a whole, when you get working with it, is that common taxonomy, the larger integration. So we're able to use things like the CSF framework in order to build our compliance stories because they all synchrony, there's synchrony between the two together and have a perfect alignment with those. We can use them for our test plans, our deployment plans, our action plans that we feed down to our engineers and have them put into place, and they will be in the same alignment with the business. And then finally, we can actually build out larger documents, policy documents, framework and governance documents that are based on that framework as well, or the data and details that come out of the framework. So in the end, I mean, for me, I believe that NIST, CSF, and the latest iteration is really critical and paramount when it comes down to really understanding your data security posture, having a large, having the right coverage and footprint, and making sure that you have a true robust security strategy in place. What happens when NIST meets with CSF what happens when CSF meets with DSPM? Well, that's where things get interesting, right? So with the structured framework that NIST is providing and allowing us to manage our cybersecurity risks, data posture security management really focuses on securing data across our environments. So it's about identification of the data, securing the data, really being able to do automation, orchestration, some self-healing on the data. There's a lot of advantages that come when you pair these two things together. The major advantages are going to be things like enhancing your data governance. You get better and more comprehensive risk management, where and like I said before, we're going to have improved compliance because we're going to be talking common nomenclature and taxonomies work across, and we're going to be able to start moving with the DSPMs into a proactive threat detection. So before I keep going, and because I'm super excited, I talk too much, quite frankly, what I'm going to do at this point is hand over the mic to Christian. Christian works in our product aspects of the business, and he is an expert in all things DSPM. So Christian, take it away, please.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. And no worries, you're not stepping on any toes. Yeah, so let's get right into it. What is DSPM, right? There we go. So we can start with the IBM definition. DSPM is a cybersecurity technology that identifies sensitive data across multiple cloud environments and services, assessing its vulnerability to security threats and risk of regulatory noncompliance. So yeah, great definition, great jumping off point. But DSPM is not new. I think we're probably all familiar with that. And with that comes, we'll say it falls short with this definition, at least as far as I'm concerned, because DSPM is not just a tool. It's not just a piece of technology. It's also a framework itself, or a strategy to tackling security in your environment. And it's built on organizational commitment to data security. It brings in not just IT and information security teams, but business leaders, end users, data owners, and really it's about a combination of activities that all adhere to certain security strategy. Some of the pillars, despite changes over time, do remain the same. So we're looking at visibility. That's your identification of sensitive data, understanding where it is, what it is, and who has access to it. Risk management is more around taking those insights about the data you have and saying, what are the issues? What are the vulnerabilities? And how do we force corrective actions in order to address some of those? And then finally, compliance assurance. This is where really we start to prioritize automation. We're worried about the standards that we have to keep within our industries and continuously monitoring our environment and those standards in order to make up-to-date reporting as well as take actions to make things secure. But so again, DSPM isn't new, and why is it relevant now? In general, next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so why is it new? Why is it relevant? Well, it's not new, but it is relevant. And DSPM has changed over time with the technology that it serves. Things like AI and multi-cloud solutions are hot right now, but with them come a slew of complex security risks and new vulnerabilities. And are we able to address them at scale, right? We want to be able to utilize these technologies in our environment, but are we prepared? And how does this challenge, address what we're already doing in our security strategies? When we look at reactive security, this is where we start and generally stop with compliance or security teams. We're worried about what our governments, what our enforcement agencies are releasing in terms of standards, and our concern is with meeting them. We want to check a box. We want to make sure that when an issue occurs, we're immediately able to address it, but really about those standards. It's not so much about our data, how we're using it, and really our solutions are reactionary, as the strategy suggests. It doesn't scale because we're relying on individuals to know these standards and know the corrective actions to take when issues happen. So that's when we jump into proactive security. This is where it starts to get better, right? We're starting to implement policies, maybe. We're creating some automation. But again, we're still really leaning on IT and security teams. They are the ones that are going to be doing that manual remediation in the first stage. And so here they are implementing these policies and automation to alleviate their own tasks or their own, we'll say, difficulties when it comes to keeping your environment secure. Cybercrime at this point is a $10 trillion economy globally. And really, there are bigger issues that these teams need to worry about. When we heavily rely on IT, those things get lost. And really, at the same time, we're missing a key piece of information, which is why did those vulnerabilities happen in the first place? Why did those sharing instances occur? And what's the justification, right? And that's where strategic security comes in place. And that's what DSPM is. In today's technology landscape, AI, right? We'll get back to that, is everything. 79%, according to a recent Microsoft survey, of leaders believe that AI is necessary for them to remain competitive. Yet at the same time, around 60% are concerned that their organization lacks the vision to roll out these tools. They know they want to get there, and leadership is pushing them to do it. But how are IT teams going to be able to handle these new risks that are occurring? And that's where a strategic approach, where everybody is involved, is able to ensure business continuity along the way. They know that the issues are going to happen no matter what. Even in situations where AI is not rolled out, we know people are using it, right? Multi-cloud solutions. The issues are still really new, but 89% of organizations already have some type of multi-cloud solution in play. And so right now, IT and InfoSec are trying to catch up. They're trying to understand what has already happened so that they can make plans for the future. And with DSPM, they can take a holistic approach to viewing what their data looks like and how they can implement security changes to go forward. So when we get the data owners involved, when they are part of the solution and not just taking tasks away from IT, but being enabled and empowered to be part of the solution, really we are creating a business continuity that exists, from start to finish. It helps us save money, save time in recovery, and also gives leadership the confidence to continue exploring new technologies as they arise. So where do we go from here? Well, that's where the AvePoint Confidence Platform comes into play. And what is that exactly, right? The Confidence Platform is kind of our blend of DSPM and where that tool and framework meet. We're looking at bridging the gap between these two because you have to take both into consideration. You have to have a plan and also have a tool to be able to implement that plan. For years, we have been a player in the SaaS space with solutions for things like backup and migration services, complex data security tools, as well as information lifecycle. But now we're bringing it all together and we're leveraging all those insights that we've always provided into one unified experience. And when you look at what we're talking about here in terms of the platform, you can see a lot of similarities with what Rob was talking about earlier with the NIST framework, things like protect and identifying your sensitive data, understanding it, the access and the permissions around it in order to optimize processes and protections for the future throughout the data lifecycle from start to finish, and incorporating different people within your organization or do this in the best way possible. We want to protect our data, constantly improve the means to do so, as well as give the best possible outcomes for handling that. The Confidence Platform provides regular data discovery and classification, proactive policies, secure collaboration, and again, that continuous monitoring piece for security assessments, ensuring that we have just the right balance of those reactive and proactive capabilities from our security strategies to keep your business running smoothly without loss to critical business information. So let's take a look at what that can look like. So this is the Confidence Command Center, and with that comes the Confidence Command Center experiences for our admins and security leaders. What we're looking at here is a way to create an intuitive experience for digging into particular areas. You have all your data in front of you, but if you know that there's a problem that you want to explore or an area that you need to look into further, we give you the means to do so. Certain things like license usage, say risk and regulatory compliance, since we're talking a lot about that, or even AI adoption. Command centers are able to kind of surface those trends to you, whether it's an issue or just something that you've noticed. We give you the means to develop that thought process, dig down further, and provide even recommendations with that centralized jumping off point so that you can either remediate or investigate whatever it is you're looking into. So when we say unified experience, right, what exactly are we talking about? It's Command Center, but what we mean is it's a single pane of glass, right? Single pane of glass that not just gives you data from all the different tools you use through AvePoint, but also combining data across, all your different multi-cloud solutions as well. What we're looking at is Microsoft versus Google, Google versus Salesforce, and trying to eliminate that need to jump back and forth between those platforms. Things like admin portals for creating policies, they start to get disconnected and disjointed when you need to go back and forth, right? And so by creating a true all-up view, we can let you know where your data lives, what the composition of that data is in those different places, and give you the means to execute based on those insights. Again, you can lean on our recommendations to optimize protection strategies across those environments, and ongoing protection remains so that business continuity is never lost in one environment versus another. And of course, let's not forget about AI. Sorry, Heather, next slide. One of our other experiences here is benchmarking with AI success, and it's a lot when it comes to AI, but really this commitment to a security strategy that's flexible enough to support it is what we're talking about. AI adoption itself is a need. Who's using it? How are they using it? Who are your best adopters and where are they falling off? And with our AI benchmarking, what we're able to do is not just look at that usage and risks associated with it, but also compare it to others in your industry. See where you're falling behind, not just in your own plan, but actually compared to others that maybe are excellent adopters, and see how you can actually improve your own enablement amongst end users. And bringing end users into play, as we've touched on, is really where things start to get interesting. It's where it's not just up to IT anymore, but data owners, who, again, are the biggest part here. So how do we make that happen, right? So when it comes to DSPM and data owners, what we're talking about is really that shared accountability model. It's more than just alleviating IT by giving certain responsibilities to data owners. We want them to be an educated and empowered part of the process. We ask them to play an active role in providing critical business context around their content. And what that means is through a commitment to enablement and making them not just data owners, but data stewards in the future, they'll be able to provide details about their content, their information to justify sharing, justify existence even, and whether or not something should be destroyed. And it helps IT to make faster decisions around those policies, how they can keep or get rid of data, and all doing so without disrupting business, right? By removing critical content. Data owners don't have to be bothered by requesting data back or going and finding it when they can't. And IT doesn't have to wait around for some sort of justification to come across their desk. It's already part of the strategy and part of the mix. So when data owners get involved, there's a couple ways that we could look to do that. All right. So first is, again, enlisting data owners and empowering them, right? We don't want it to be harder on them is what we're looking at. We want it to make sense, right? And because if it does get harder, it's just going to end up falling back on IT, either because they're not going to do what they need to do, or they're going to lose the data that they had because they missed something along the way. What we want is to be able to give them, within context to the data that they're already accessing, an idea of what their violations and issues might be, and why there should be a concern. That's where IT can provide their expertise and their context to the data and what they should be worried about. And since it's their data, they know what it is, who should have access to it, and they can make decisions that they didn't previously because they had a lack of confidence in their ability to take corrective actions. IT has now given them the tools that they need in order to do what needs to be done, and data owners can feel empowered to take that charge. With the end user experience, the goal, again, is to simplify the process. We're not trying to add more steps. We're not trying to make it harder. And so we meet them where they are familiar, places like in Teams or in OneDrive, for example. The OneDrive cleanup was actually something that we recently rolled out. And basically, we discovered this through our own Copilot rollout, where we were looking to empower our data owners, right? And we realized that in order to give some of them Copilot licenses, their OneDrives needed to be taken care of, because OneDrive can be a messy place. And with individuals that have been here for 10 plus years and not necessarily always sharing data in the best way, we realized that giving them a Copilot license meant risks and vulnerabilities were going to come. So with this, what we're able to do is roll out this OneDrive renewal process into the already existing processes that we know. Data IT admins are able to just simply set retention rules that set this OneDrive flow up and get it to the data owners with adherence to the standards and compliance that they need, or governance rules, I should say. They can set the expectation, and then the data owners are the ones that actually are able to clean up the mess. And with thousands of files, if this was just on IT, there's no saying how long it could take. So in order to bring the data owners in, it's up to them to really take charge of their environment. But how else are data owners getting involved in the Confidence platform? through lifecycle. Similarly, lifecycle rules allow data owners to get involved and alleviate the burden on IT. And we're also able to give data owners a chance to, again, justify that existence and access to content. A big part of lifecycle is identifying rot data or inactive data that's no longer being used, getting it out of circulation so it's both not a risk as well as not a distraction. And with data owners getting involved in this process, they're able to provide the context again to say, hey, just because this is old doesn't mean it's not useless. I might still reference it. Things that like that are just never going to come across IT because they're not using the data in the same way. And with a lack of strategy, when we're trying to remove this type of data, it can take a lot of time and effort on half of IT to try to learn that context that just really would get lost in the end. The context provided by data owners is invaluable. It helps us learn, helps IT learn, and eventually helps them improve their security methods over time. All right, we can hop to the next one. Perfect. And this is where that learning comes into play big time. So now that your process is better, right, as an IT admin, now that data owners are involved in working towards becoming data stewards and adding all that business context for you, you're able to capitalize on that. And we've given you the ability to edit and manage existing metadata properties, as well as creating your own custom properties. And what that means is that as time goes on, as security issues arise, as context is added, you can actually take that information and start to create your own scheme and metadata for easier management and searching, and even for policies. With security and compliance in mind, find out who your worst oversharers are, hit them with a label, and when exposure or incidents happen, you know who to look at first. With AI, see who your early adopters are, right? And based on your own metrics, find ways to engage with them, get them more involved in planning and enablement as you roll it out to other places. But really, all this is done through custom metadata and the fact that because you have all that additional context and learning along the way, you as an IT admin or security individual can take advantage of this. So it's your data and your platform, and here to help you manage it securely. But now let's, I think, jump back to Rob, right? So he can walk us through the platform a bit.
There, Rob. I think you're on mute.
The dreaded mute button.
Sorry, having technical difficulties and issues.
Okay.
All right. Is my screen sharing? Are we seeing the AI confidence platform?
We sure are.
Good to go.
All right. So my objective here, real quick, in the last few minutes that we have, I believe we have about 10 before Q&A time at best. But what we're looking at right here and right now is our command centers, the actual AvePoint confidence platform as a whole, like Christian had spoken about. A good DSPM tool, as he called out, was going to have visibility into all of your assets, all of your areas. We're going to be able to do risk management and risk allocation, be able to understand what's happening, and then we're going to be able to implement our compliance inside of these platforms. So while the context of what I'm showing today is really tracking back into some of the repeated conversations that I've had with customers and what's going on. So the example for today is quite simple. I recently did and was working through a gap analysis with a customer who's trying to roll out AI. The reason that they're trying to get it rolled out is to enable that external collaboration that we had spoken about earlier. And out of that gap analysis, we realized that we had issues for the business with data leakage. There wasn't a lot of internal barriers, boundaries, and process, and there wasn't a lot of good data management. So the two types of AI that they were trying to roll out are, the native ones for Microsoft, things like Copilot, the stuff that's going to be looking at all of the data that the users have permissions to. And then the secondary thing is they're trying to look through their unstructured data to make sure that they have good metadata classification, tagging, and understanding of what's going on so that they can apply those labels and then be able to identify what data would make sense to use for RAG and for tuning, to get those AI models out there. So in the end of the day, they couldn't move into a pilot phase and even get this rolled out into production because the risk assessments that came out and the data leak issues were a little too high for the business to be comfortable with. So on a pre-pilot segment of it, we did the gap analysis. We created a structure for deployment. And we identified some key themes that we need to get implemented. So for today's demo, what I'm going to do, and like I said, this is a bridge demo, is just kind of walk through and touch on the points that we need to do. So from the identify angle and having visibility into your data, as Christian said, there's these command centers that come in. This is giving you a single pane of glass on an administrator or a high level aspect of it. The big things that we're able to see real quick and what I can actually read from looking at this right now is we can see that we only have one Copilot license that's been assigned inside of this tenant. I'm able to switch if I have multi-tenant management. I'm doing multiple deployments and different aspects of it. For this tenant, I have one Copilot license deployed because I, as a security engineer, am going to need to be able to test that as I get going with it and do some sample queries. So that's why you see that. What you also see is the trend in the history over time. So in my case scenario, there's only been one active user because there's one license, that's me. You can actually see when I came on, turned it on, did some configuration to do these crawls. I took a couple of days where I was busy doing things that obviously weren't part of this project and job. And then when we came back, I did a couple of little bits of activity and testing. So we can actually start to see what the users are, like activity is, what that market is, and track and trend over time. The other things that we start to see on here are key performance indicators and metrics that are going to be key risk indicators for me. So I'm able to see my AI exposed sensitivity. So with the AI that's out there, that's connected into our SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, et cetera, in the back end of Microsoft, there's 22,000 sensitive items with high exposure levels that are actually in containers that are going to be exposed to the AI tools that we've got set up in here. And then moreover, what's even more concerning to me and for this customer at the time was that there was 30 plus 40,000 sensitive items that didn't have any classification. We don't know what that is. So these dashboards really do provide you with full analytics and metrics on that high level. But then again, as Christian said, there's role-based dashboards that are implemented out there depending on what your specific needs are. People don't get full keys to the castle, full visibility. We have role-based access control, delegation, et cetera. When we start getting into some of these metrics and other aspects of it, we are able to provide the same type of analytics dashboards and other groupings over to subsets of staff or different roles. So when it comes down to a risk management category, what we have is a security-based risk management dashboard that comes up in our risk and remediation segment. So in this specific module, what we're able to do is go in and based on the amount of data or the data that's inside of these workspaces can be different cloud workspaces. In this case, I'm in Microsoft, but I'm able to see high-level metrics that matter to me as a risk compliance and security person when I want to get in here. I'm able to see how many external users we have, how that tracks and tests over time. I'm able to see sensitive items and external links. But the big part that makes this kind of a system magic is we're actually able to implement and put in our risk vectors. We are able to classify what kind of data we're looking for. We can do auto-label classification if needed on that data as it's discovered in here and identified. That populates out what the items are for sensitivity, and then we calculate our risk by putting in vectors for low, medium, high risk, or whatever your vectors are to meet with your business, and then we start collecting groupings of it. So there might be PII, PCI, other information that in itself needs to be protected, but it's not necessarily going to be identified. It might be a low risk if it's sitting in the right components in the right architected workspaces. It might move to a medium risk if it's shared with groups of 5 or more people or some other aspect of it internally so that we can look at it. So what we're going to do when we get these systems applied is identify or build in what type of sensitive content we're looking for in alignment with the organization. And then we're going to define and develop the risk. As we build out these dashboards, that's when you start to get the click down, click through, see through metrics where we can actually start to take action on it. So with these type of products, what we're able to get is the visibility. And then we're also able to start to dial that in and get a bead and an understanding of our risk management and compliance standards. The final thing that you need to start doing with this is actually take action. Like having data, being able to see what you can do doesn't really mean much, in that aspect of it if we can't take action on it. So going back to that customer and that client that we were working with and I'm using for this sample use case, big things that stand out. If I have 38,000 files that are missing classification, I know that we have people, policy, process, and procedure. I went through and did that gap analysis using the NIST framework and getting the CSF done. There's obviously policy violations that are happening in this organization, and that's what their findings were. So what we were able to do with their engineers was come into a dashboard like this, use the click-through modality, which when we do that, we'll notice that it actually brings us back over into that Insights application or the module that was included in this platform. And then we actually have a filtered list that's automatically showing us all of those files and content. Now, 38,000 files, I'm not going to be a security guy that goes through this and fix it, but just for the actionable content and so people know, what I'm able to do is get key performance metrics, adjust my comments or my columns up here to grab the metadata and information around these files that are important to me or for my report. And then I can either make a decision of taking an action on the file. So I can select the files that I want to do. I can go in and see detailed information, permissions, apply sensitive labels, et cetera, and build them out. But in this case scenario, when I have this many files, this many records, what I'm going to end up wanting to do, and what we're doing with this customer on the project, is we are going to export summary reports that actually outline and identify where we have the largest offenders, whether that be individual users or groups, maybe full teams, that are causing the issues where they're not doing their server-side client or their client-side labeling on it and getting these implemented. And then we're going to give that information back to leadership management, the governance board, so that they can work on and adjust their change management strategies and adoption strategies. So I would be exporting these out. I would be putting together detailed lists and reports in a CSV format, and then I would be feeding that back to the business with the governance board so that they can go ahead and start retraining activities and get this done. After a period of performance happens and we start tracking this progress using these dashboards, and that takes us back to the dashboards when we're seeing this. These are going to be trends that we're going to see over time. We will see these numbers and metrics go down over time as they're doing this. What I like to do as well is set up that phase 2. We're giving the business a notification of enforcement. We need to get this objective taken care of and achieved by a certain timeline. So we can't just give them a carrot without putting out a stick. What I like to say at that stage is, on this date, this time, when this is done, we're going to actually go ahead and apply a default label to all of this stuff to obscure it from the information until time comes back. So after you've done that export, you've worked with the business, you can simply come in here. You can highlight all of the remaining aspects of it. You can manage the sensitivity label, and then we can go through, apply the appropriate label for what we need based on the business needs, and we can hit that out and apply across the board. So that's the first action item and step, or the process that we're working to eliminate the issue of unclassified or lack of classification. But then when we go back and we take a look at some of the other aspects in here that we need to work on, you know, it really rings true. Like, we have all of these sensitive items with high exposure. I'm going to have to take a look at that. I'm more concerned about the 12 sensitive items that are shared with everyone. So again, I'm going to come back into my second edict. I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to start doing investigations into my sharing and permissions to find out where I have policy violations and things are broken as well. The nice part about these systems is, yes, I'm able to act as an engineer and get all of these things done in here. But all of the activities, all of the work, and all of the security posturing is actually being captured into our logs, our activity explorers, and then it's shipped over potentially into Azure in the back end. By default, you'll see all of this information. You'll see all of the changes and any kind of policy violations and impacts that actually have alerts and notifications on it. And you have true attestation for what happens. The final aspect of the platform that I wanted to talk about, because of time today, is definitely going to be implementing policies and getting that done. So what we need to do is have an understanding of what our minimum viable framework is and what our baselines are for our security function, and ensure that there's policies in there. And when those policies are violated or there's something on them, we need to be able to detect and respond appropriately. So if we go to our policies application, what we're able to do inside of this aspect of the DSPM platform is go in and either implement service level policies or tenant level policies that are going to set a desired state configuration and ensure that we have the minimum rules and assignments into the business to be able to monitor for threats and then act or alert on them. So what you'll see here is, in that data security policy that we had with that customer, for the AI policy that they created, and I went ahead and used NIST for the translation on it. But basically, as we did the gap, we've created an AI policy that needed to be done for the deployment of AI to the business and how it be supported. We're looking at a protect policy. We're looking at data security, and then we're mapping out a security group. I'm able to come in here and set it up so that we can apply certain business rules and restrictions to full scopes or sub scopes of those environments. So each night, I have a security policy scan set up that's going to monitor our security groups and implement a restriction. The restriction on this is, I'm saying that restricted security groups cannot have specific members put in. In my case scenario, I'm not allowed to have consultants, according to my outside Active Directory, get access to HR, legal and other aspects of the business. So I'll create these policies, give them a naming convention that fits in with my security policy or my compliance policy construct. And then I'm going to go ahead and build out a description of it with what the result is so that anyone looking at the policy understands exactly what it does. And then I'm going to build out my rules that do things such as remove the out of policy user if a event happens. So it does self-healing. It will notify specific users of the compliance fault or issue, and it will notify the group or the group owner, whoever owns that workspace, of what happened. So these are just examples, again, based on the conversations and communications we've had today on how you can use these types of platforms to go ahead and implement out a DSPM strategy and following the NIST CSF framework and find the maximum results. At that, I'm going to hand it over to Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks so much. And Christian, thank you for walking us through all this very useful information. And for those of you who joined us, thanks so much for taking the last hour to learn how to build a strong data security posture for your organization. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think we'll drop some emails in here. And as mentioned, the slides will be sent out and include a ton of resources on DSPM, as well as links to the NIST CSF resources that will help you strengthen your data security posture and go beyond secure. Thanks again for the time, and hope to talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.